everybody to the Thanks for Rolling podcast. I'm Pat, alongside with Jeff, and today we are joined by Andrew from Addison Farm. What's up, man? Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Welcome.
So we were just mid-conversation here. You had pulled out some goodies for us on the table, and we're about to explain, and Jeff said, let's jump right into it. So what are we looking at here?
Yeah, so the mug is just an Addison Farm mug, just something cool to start your day with, put your coffee in it. But there's a lotion in there, which is one of our Addison Farm CBD lotions.
Awesome.
It's peppermint, which is my favorite. It kind of has that minty, cooling sensation to it. But for me, my knee's pretty shattered. I have 20% of my LCL left, so whenever I ride the bike or do anything, it's sore. So I usually do a local application of that to help out. But I thought Pat would really appreciate the genuine American leather.
Yeah, nice.
Hand-stitched. Has a couple of nice logos on there.
Yeah, it's very cool.
One for the podcast, one for the
I didn't even see that, dude. That's awesome.
Yeah. And then
That's really cool.
Has the Addison Farm logo and our Colt Helps logo, which we can talk about a little bit later. But one of the coolest parts about that is hemp is so versatile that that's actually dyed with our hemp extract.
Dude, that is so cool.
So
that is awesome. Very, very cool. We'll post some pictures of that. That is
Yeah.
fantastic.
I know last weekend or whenever it was when we stopped by your place, we were talking about the leather stuff because I said I liked the patches you were making. That's really cool.
Yeah,
Are you stitching these too?
Yeah, hand stitching. Yeah, it's a little hobby I started. I think it's just awesome to make something from scratch, and it's just another way to utilize our products as well. But it's also when you get a bookmark, especially you just get like a plastic piece of junk, and it's really flimsy. It doesn't feel substantial. That is a bookmark that will last you your lifetime. You could pass it on to somebody else.
Yeah,
it's
definitely.
something that I think has some value to it.
Very cool, man. Thank you.
Yeah, you're very welcome.
Cool.
No, thank you for having me.
Very, very cool. I love it.
Here, before we dive in, can you just slide that mic over a little bit?
Yeah,
Pull it this way.
this way.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Oh, sounds even better.
Yeah. So
So who are you?
So who am I? Yeah. So I am a farmer, entrepreneur, engineer, mechanic. I mean, you name it, I've done it. I guess we can get into. I'll try to make it as short as possible.
We got plenty of time
for our story.
Let's go back a little ways.
Yeah.
So I know you and I have several careers and hobbies that kind of overlap. So I think it'd be cool to take it back and kind of walk us through what you've done, what you've been into, and kind of where we're at now.
For sure, yeah. So I actually transferred twice in college. I went to Fordham my freshman year, played soccer there, and then came back, got my feet on the ground at Tunxus Community College, and then ended up transferring into UConn, where I ended up getting my civil engineering degree. I graduated in 2008. So that was really fun. That was right when the economy dropped.
Yeah.
And ended up getting a job. I did a bunch of civil site work, and then ended up doing geotech work when I graduated, because unfortunately a bunch of companies went under and there was a lot going on then. So then did geotech work and learned a ton. It was actually a very relatable skill set to what I do now, which all subsurface investigation, soil investigations, environmental, issues with soil. So anything that was subsurface was really in that. Then I went on. I worked at Atlantic Inertial, which is actually in Cheshire, and that was aerospace. So I hopped from big excavators in the dirt to a clean room environment, making inertial gyroscopes for munition guidance. So completely different worlds. Yeah. Then I jumped again to I worked at Stanley in Farmington, making automated doors, and then went to a valve company. And I think this is where it kind of got interesting for me. We could talk about a bunch of things. I blew out my knee in the middle of all that. We're playing soccer, but essentially at that point, my wife and I, we decided to have a kid, and we figured, dual income, family. My wife's working down in Fairfield as an attorney. I'm an engineer in New Britain. We're gonna do the typical. Let's put into our 401k, send our kid to daycare. We're going to do all this, regular stuff. And we were home for the paternity and maternity leave. Everything was awesome. And then I had to go back to work. And I was like, all right, that's fine. Then my wife had to go back to work, and we dropped our kid off for a trial at daycare. We said, this doesn't feel right. My wife looked at me and said, well, what are we doing? And I called up my work and I said, hey, I quit. So
No kidding. Yeah.
I had actually started up an automotive shop in the meantime, and I was kind of just running it. I work during the day, and then I go to the shop at night. And it became, at that point, I watched my daughter during the day, and I ran the shop at night. And
So you didn't sleep?
no, never. I remember many a times coming home and getting Dunkin' Donuts on the way home when they were opening, so that I can go back and give those to my wife, sleep for about 2 hours, and then my wife would kick me out of bed and say, you got to watch your daughter. Yeah. So, yeah, no sleep during that time. And I think one of the biggest parts about that was me and my wife didn't spend any time together. Yeah. It was two ships passing in the night. And we decided, hey, I don't know what we're going to do. We got this opportunity to go out to Colorado. My sister was out there, and she says, why don't you come out here? And
First time.
Holy moly.
That's right. We have a farm out in Loveland, Colorado. Why don't you come out here and farm? Yeah, okay, good joke. You're crazy, right? And a month later, we're in Colorado. We sold our house. We packed everything up, shut down the shop. It was insane, but we knew something needed to change.
How long ago was this?
So this was in 2019.
Okay.
Actually, at the end of 2018. And we just took a leap and went out there and had some absolute bliss out there. Colorado is beautiful. But unfortunately, the relationship fell apart. You don't really need to get into it, but took us about a month and a half to pack up. It took us about a day and a half to get back. So we drove cross country, no house, no job, 2.5-year-old in tow, not knowing what to do, and moved in with my in-laws as well. So that was a fun couple of months. Yeah. So this is early 2019, and we decided, hey, we loved farming. We loved the hemp side of things. We loved growing. Said, well, why don't we continue this? And it just so happened that it was May, I believe, that year, the Connecticut pilot program went into place. We got our license. We ended up finding our house that we live in Granby right now, in a 2-acre plot. And it took us a little while to kind of close and get in there. We actually had our 40-foot shipping container dropped off at the property before we even moved in. And it's pretty much the day we moved in, I had a tractor dropped off. I had 20 ton of stone. I had a greenhouse kit, and we started breaking ground and just went nuts. And we actually harvested our first harvest that October. Wow. So it was pretty much a whirlwind. Wow. The farming aspect was amazing. Moving was amazing. I mean, it's all been about the family and getting and doing things for Addison to make sure that we can raise her the way that we want to raise her.
I remember when you guys had first moved in, because we moved to Granby in 2018, so we were just ahead of you a little bit, and I drive by your house every day on my way here. And so I saw the shipping container, I saw the tractor. We have the same exact tractor. Yeah. And then I drive by one day, and you guys I think you had just transplanted into the fields. Yeah. And I'm like, are they growing weed in their front yard? Bold move by the new people.
Yeah, we want to make an impact right when we get there. But yeah, it's not. I mean, if you asked me 10 years ago and go, yeah, Andy, you're gonna be a hemp farmer. I'd be like, yeah, good joke. That's really funny. But it actually makes perfect sense. And as we've gotten older, I mean, we're all bent and broken, and for many years, you hurt your back. I had at the shop when I was lifting transmissions and lifting 20-inch wheels like I shouldn't be, using my back. I had 2 bulging discs, and you end up popping Advil, or even worse, I've had some buddies that were addicted to Vicodin and other opioids. So having an alternative to all of that is absolutely amazing. I mean, I take it every day. It helps me with all my pain and inflammation. And at this point, we have a lot of customers that we're helping, which is actually the most important part. I make the joke. We did a couple of years ago, we did 740 plants, and they were all about 6 to 7 feet tall. So it was quite a bit of work, but that one plant was mine. Nobody touched that. A really nice one on the corner, but the rest was for everybody else. So we quickly realized how important it was to grow healthy plants and get really good product to help everybody.
So you just mentioned transferring to the field. So do you grow in a greenhouse and then transfer outside?
So that greenhouse, which I put up in about a week, so that was pretty fun. We start from seed. We get our seeds from Oregon CBD right now, which they have some of the best genetics in the country. And we always start from seed because we want to see it from the beginning to the end. And about 4 weeks in, we'll take the plants and we'll transplant them in the field. And that's a really fun process. Typically, a lot of people would just use a seeder and just go straight from seed, or they have a transplanting cart where people sit in there and they'll transplant it. For us, that's
walk back and forth.
Yeah, exactly, back and forth. But the first year, we decided to do it a little different because we didn't amend the soil. So we went through with a pulse hole digger, so I have a 9-inch auger, and we went down about 18 inches and basically broke up the soil and made almost like an earthen pot. So we'd put all our fertilizer and everything in there and let the roots just go straight down. And found out a couple of years later that that's a really good thing to do when you have a silt deposit and it rains for 2 months straight, because it actually allows the water to escape and then you don't get root rot. So yeah, it's a long process. It's all done by hand. It's me, my wife Courtney, and Addison out in the field until the job gets done. But extremely gratifying to see these plants just grow like crazy, and probably a little bit of my engineering that goes into I tape everything out and I make sure all my rows are straight. So it looks really, really nice when everything's grown and big, because you have these beautiful aisles to go down.
Can you talk a little bit about the plant? When someone hears hemp, do they think marijuana? Are we talking the same thing? What are we talking about here?
It's a very good question. I like to use a bunch of different examples. The first one is water and vodka. Both clear liquids, right? So they have the same properties. Well, it's the same thing with hemp and marijuana. It's the same plant. It just has very different qualities. And it's the same thing if you guys said, well, if I came in here and said, well, just jujitsu is the same as karate, because you guys both wear the same outfits. That would be very right. It's just not the same thing. Hemp in general, it doesn't have the THC. It has a much smaller amount. It's a CBD rich plant is going to have a 28-to-1 CBD to THC ratio. So there will be a little bit in there, but to be a federally legal plant, it has to be below 0.3% THC by volume. So we have to go through state testing and check everything. That's one of the reasons why we use Oregon CBD. So you could get some good genetics where the plants are going to be uniform.
Makes sense.
And that's another reason why you start from seed, because you want to make sure that you're getting the right plants in the ground. Especially because if you test hot, you actually can have, if you did it negligently or on purpose, I should say, they can come after you for it, because they'll say that you were trying to grow an illegal plant.
Sure.
But yeah, they're completely different qualities. All the cannabinoids. So I forget the number now. There's over 250 known cannabinoids. So the main ones are CBD, THC, CBG, CBN, and they all have wonderful qualities. We feel that the CBD plant itself just has such a wide range of great things that it can help with. I actually have a customer that him and his wife take it, and he's like me, he's messed up, his shoulder's messed up, his back's messed up, so he takes it kind of for the pain and inflammation side of things, where his wife, she's perfectly healthy, it doesn't have a ailment anywhere, but she has some stress and anxiety, and it seems to help her with that. So the plant itself is so amazing. It has what's called a phytocannabinoid system. So we have an endocannabinoid system, and the plant actually interacts with our receptors and our body in such a good way and causes things to happen, which is just an absolute amazing thing.
Yeah, it's fascinating. Right?
and
mind-boggling.
And you look at it from a standpoint where you have so many medications that are made from plants. And I had a wonderful discussion with a pharmacist, and he said it's so interesting that most medicines that you would get from a plant, if you take too little, just doesn't do anything. If you take the right amount, it can change something so drastic, like a heart arrhythmia. It could stop it. If you take too much, it'll kill you. Mm-hmm. And of course, he stopped me right in my tracks, and he goes, "We don't have enough research. We don't know, but this seems to be the one unicorn where you really can't take too much of it." I think I read an article that came out of Canada that you'd have to take 50,000 milligrams to overdose on it, which is kind of like the milk challenge. You can't drink. You just can't do it.
Yeah.
There's no way to get that much into your system.
Yeah. I have like a gazillion questions. I'm going to try to keep these, keep myself in control. Yeah, fascinating to me. I mean, you take CBD, right?
Yep.
I don't take it currently, but I have taken it for multiple years, probably off and on. But I'm always a little aware of like where I'm getting it from, right? And like I'm always looking like, is this tested, right? Like I always have like kind of that back of my mind, because it seems like, I don't know, 5 years ago, maybe a little longer than that. It seems like all of a sudden this stuff popped up out of nowhere, right?
Yeah.
And then it's not only does it start to enter the consciousness, but then it starts popping up all over the place geographically too, right? So I'm curious, like, how, I don't even know if you can answer this, right? But how does someone think about that? Like, should they be, I don't know if we're venturing into areas that we can't talk about.
No,
right?
no,
But,
you're good. No,
how does someone differentiate between like the crap?
Yeah.
Right?
No,
and
I mean, I personally kind of look at it the same way I do food, right? You can get your food directly from the farmer and you know exactly what you're getting, or you buy something prepackaged at the convenience store and you're who knows how many steps away from the farmer.
Yeah, I like to use the example, right? You can get sushi at a gas station.
Right.
You could also get CBD at a gas station. I personally don't get sushi from the gas station. I don't think that's a very good choice.
You can also get IBS from the sushi at the gas station.
You could get a lot from the sushi at the gas station. But the way that we look at it is, I think I heard a stat that 70% of the CBD that is in the United States is imported. So to me, that's really scary. The plant itself is a heavy eater of heavy metals. So it is actually being used. I forget which company. There's a big lawsuit overseas about microplastics, and they were polluting around, and there was a huge lawsuit about it. And they found that hemp grown in an industrial sense can actually clean the soil because it's such a heavy eater of all these toxins that are in the ground. So that being said, now you have a plant that grows flower, that flower is made into a product, and you're getting it from where? What's the soil look like? What's it picking up? So first thing is, if it's not tested, that's terrifying. Because you could be ingesting lead, arsenic, cadmium on a daily. Then on top of that, there's pesticides. You have no idea what people are spraying onto this stuff. And the beauty of our product is we don't spray anything, because I don't spray anything. We try to keep it as healthy as possible. Plus, my daughter runs through the field, so I don't want her to. It's the same thing with our vegetables that we grow. I mean, you don't want to heavy spray this stuff when your daughter's running in, grabbing a carrot, brushing off the dirt, and eating it. So we try to grow everything as organically as possible, and to pesticide free, and keep it as healthy as possible. The other thing is, we also do, being a geotech engineer, part of my life. We did all our soil testing. We check everything. We amend the soils. We use all organic fertilizers. We grow cover crop to make sure that the soil stays healthy, that there's good biology. It's just the whole process. I mean, it was a huge learning curve. I mean, coming from a world where you could calculate something to a T to, hey, here's the ground, let's make something grow out of it. And I didn't realize some of the things with pHs and the amount of nutrient, nitrogen, phosphorus. And then you have the whole other side of it where it's the amount of water. How clean is the water? What kind of water? How good's the rain that's coming in? And I know there's a bunch of people across the country that are going to claim, well, Oregon has the best or Colorado has the best. But I can tell you that there's a reason why all the shade tobacco was grown in the Connecticut River Valley. Our soil is just absolutely amazing. I'm going to get a little nerdy with this, but we have a glacial fluvial deposit, which is when the glacier ran through, it's the silt bed, essentially the riverbed, which is the most fertile, amazing soil that you can get. At my farm, it's tillable A soil, which makes it the best soil that you can get by the USDA. And then on top of that, my farm was never a tobacco farm or corn farm, so it was never sprayed like crazy. I think at one point there was a couple cows grazing, and there was a butcher and a blacksmith there.
Nice.
Yeah, actually,
so you had some poop at least.
Yeah. So funny enough, the house that we moved into, and we loved it from the time we saw it, but it's a 1761 farmhouse, and one of the earliest houses in Granby. And that ended up being our logo because it represents farming, it represents our history, and us getting kind of back to our roots.
That's cool. Did you guys purchase the house and that land with the idea of starting the farm, or was with the hemp farm? I don't understand. The land was there. That was the actual.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Or did that evolve afterwards?
We of course. I moved in. Well, we went and looked at it, and I said, "This is not enough. I want 10,000 acres, but I'll take the 2, and I'll make the best that I can from it." And I think that's one of my I don't know what you want to call it, special skills, that I can see land and just know where I want to put everything. Same thing. If I drive by a car that has grass around it, I could see that thing finished. It's just it's one of the things that I've learned to do. So yeah, as soon as I walked on the property, I said, okay, this is going to be one big field. This is going to be another field. We'll put our vegetables here. This is where the greenhouse is going to go. The barn, that was another story that had a fire in it in 1970. Which, funny enough, there's a pond down the road, and there's a whole article about it, how the guy who owned that property was also the fire chief, and it was the coldest it's ever been. I forget what month it was, but it was February. The road was frozen over, and they had to pump from that pond to put out the fire. There were some horses. They got the horses out. There's this whole long story about it. But when we moved in, essentially, there was a sign there that said, "Do not walk on this. It's very, very dangerous." So I ended up, there was a hayloft, and I took out the entire second floor. And I was holding on to the roof rafters, making sure. And I ended up, when I was taking the beams out, I would just kind of drop it down. And some of these things just went,
oh, wow.
And they broke into 4 pieces. All that was terrifying. Yeah. But again, took 20 ton of stone. I laid a nice floor in there. Have a couple of fans for circulation. So we actually take the hemp from the field into the barn to slow cure it. So we string it all up and break the plants down, and that's how we actually kind of lock in all that good flavor. Yeah, I'm actually worried if we ever did move because of the fire, if there's some special sauce going on with a little bit of the charcoal and the air that's in there. Yeah. But it was a barn that was used to, like I said, cure leather at one point. It was a hayloft. There was some other things. So one of the cool parts about it is it has no windows. That sunlight will degrade the hemp, and it'll change the cannabinoids. So by letting it cure in essentially complete darkness, it really preserves all the good stuff that goes into it.
So is that the same as how they cure the tobacco all around? Is it kind of the same idea?
Essentially, yeah. Tobacco in the leaves, they just want it to cure evenly and to have the leaves. It doesn't matter if they brown or anything. They just want them to be really, really nice, especially the ones around us when they're rolling cigars. You can't have pests getting into it. You can't have holes because they're the ones that go on the outside of the cigars. For us, we don't care as much about the way it looks, although when you grow a good plant, it looks really good too. But yeah, it's more about making sure that the circulation is proper and that you get a slow cure. That's the beauty of Connecticut. You have these kind of microclimate, warm days, cool nights. You get kind of the increase, and it really does give you a slow cure. But that's why we also break it down into individual branches when we do hang it. So we actually take the plant, and basically it has nodes that come out of it every branch. We cut each node, and then we actually split it in half so that each branch has a hook on it, and we just use the natural hook. If you hang the whole plant and say the leaves go over it, and you already even have something going on where you have some mold or some rot that's going on, it's just going to be 10 times worse. And if it's locked in there with moisture, so we want spacing, good aeration, make sure that they dry out completely so that we can have a well-cured flower that has all the great qualities. And essentially the top, so we actually sell from our farm stand, which we could get into that a little. It's a little Japanese mini truck, a Mitsubishi mini cab that we built into our farm stand.
I've heard about this.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah.
So that's pretty cool. So I've made the majority of my sales standing next to that thing. But yeah, it's a really cool eye catcher, but it's incredibly useful. I've gone to farmers markets with it. I've driven around town. I've done deliveries because it's right-hand drive. So there's some really, really awesome.
It's really the coolest farm stand I've ever seen.
Yeah. So because we're a farm, we sell our flour, and that is a commodity. It's like going anywhere buying tomatoes or corn at a farm stand. It's a tax-free commodity. So we take the main colas, which is the top part of the plant, which usually has the highest percentage of cannabinoids in it, and that's what we use for our raw cured trim flour. So we sell that just in half-ounce packages. You can buy it. There's no dispensary or anything it's just our good plant that is essentially unprocessed, just trimmed to kind of get all the sugar leaves and everything off it. And I never smoked, which is another thing. I grew up in Bristol. All my friends smoked around me, but I just never got into it. I was running, I was playing soccer. So actually my first experience with CBD is we had flour, we didn't have products. So I said, I don't know, let me try this stuff. So we grabbed one of my wife's grandmother's recipe for pumpkin bread and ground it up. I said, I don't know, bake it into this thing. And pumpkin bread is absolutely amazing. The only problem is it has 3 cups of sugar. You make 3 loaves. So it's just like, it's really good, but to be taking your CBD daily like that is a little tough. Yeah, I took that, and I was, I kind of did the calculations. I said, okay, well, this bag equals this many milligrams if I cut it into this many pieces. So my first one was kind of around 20 milligrams. I said, I don't know, let me try this. Ate it, drank my coffee. I went out in the field, and that was actually after the first year. So I was still having the bulge discs in my back, and I was struggling. I remember I was working. I was just cultivating, getting the field ready. I kind of stood up, and I go, huh, that's weird. I don't really feel what I was feeling before. I said, it's just a fluke, right? And I went, and I ended up waking up like a truck hit me the next day because I worked so much, and my back was killing me. I took another piece of bread, and I went out in the field, and I did the same thing. I go, oh my God, I need to tell everybody about this. This is absolutely amazing. So I was sold at that point.
It never even occurred to me that you could use the flour for other things. I'm so used to thinking about CBD as an oil, like a tincture or a cream, right? Like a droppy, like I've seen like a gummy even, right? But it never occurred to me like, oh yeah, you can bake it just like people bake stuff with marijuana.
Anything. It's crazy. We've worked with a couple of, Avon Prime Meats mainly, and they're absolutely awesome, and they do a lot of things locally at some of the farms, and they set up their food trucks. And for Valentine's Day last year, they took some of our CBD oil and they made this chocolate tort with a chocolate ganache on it with our CBD in it. It was so good. So chefs are actually utilizing it in their recipes now.
Very cool.
Yeah, I think it's there. Sky's the limit when it comes to that.
How much flour do you sell, like in comparison to your other products? Do you sell a lot of it?
Yeah, I mean, we'll sell quite a bit. I mean, we have some customers that they utilize it for specific things, and it really helps with the things that they do. So we offer what we call a CSA. So typically a CSA is you buy a share, you go you go to a farm, you pick up your vegetables every week. For us, it's just you're supporting our farm. So we're giving you our product in bulk. So someone who utilizes it that much, we have a full share and a half share, which would be 3 ounces is a half share and 6 ounces is a full share. So that's 2 massive ball jars. So we do have customers that buy that. I mean, we'll sell some here and there, but I would say the majority of the product is our 40 milligram per milliliter, 1200, which is kind of that regular tincture. It's our crude mixed with an organic MCT oil, so no chemicals, no additives. But that, even for me, the flour is just more work. So when you get the oil, put it in your mouth, you go on with your day, right?
Instant.
It's you don't have to prep for it and get it ready for the week.
Do people ask you for recommendations around like dosing and that kind of stuff?
All the time.
Yeah.
All
What do you
the
tell
time.
them? Like, do you have like?
Yeah.
I know it's hard to kind of say.
Yeah, it's very difficult. Everybody's so different. Body types, metabolism, absorption. On top of that, there's a lot of things that you can't see, such as your endocannabinoid system versus my endocannabinoid system. So it's very hard to say what one person, and we have horses, we have dogs. I mean, people they give it to animals the same way. It's, well, how much does my golden retriever need? I'm like, I don't know. I can't tell you that. I'm also not a pharmacist or a doctor. But the best thing that we have is we have our own experience. And it kind of works really well with me and my wife. So she's about 125 pounds, and she takes about 10 to 20 milligrams twice a day. And then I'm 210 pounds, and I take 60 milligrams twice a day. I'm sorry, 30 milligrams twice a day, which is 60 milligrams.
You take it what when you get up, when you go to bed?
I take it first thing in the morning when I drink my coffee, and then I take it in the afternoon right at lunch. And that usually is good for me, although I am day 49 of 75 hard.
Right.
So I was working out this past week, and I tweaked my back just really weird. I was doing bent over rows. I actually don't know how that happened, but when that happens, it's a very large increase because on the daily, just kind of dealing with soreness, it's not that big of a deal. When you have a trauma like that, well, there's a lot of things flushing into there, so it actually takes a lot more. Actually, both my wife and I have had back injuries. She actually played in the NCAA finals for the UConn women's soccer team, so
cool.
she's no joke either. But she used to squat 300 pounds for sets, and she's, like I said, 125 pounds. So
My knees hurt.
Exactly. But she ended up with 3 stress fractures in her back, and it was 2 years ago now. She came out of the greenhouse with a little seedling tray of onions, weighs 4 pounds, and she tweaked and went down, and I was like, oh my gosh, what? Like, am I going to have to call the ambulance? What's going on? And we took the lotion, we put it on. She took some CBD, and we brought her to the orthopedic. They took an x-ray. Of course, they had all these x-rays from UConn. So they're like, yeah, it moved, but you're young. You shouldn't have this much pain. But since you do, here's your pain med. Yeah. Here's your muscle relaxer. Here's your anti-inflammatory. She's like, no, I'm good. I'm not going to take all that stuff. And she was actually able to manage her pain and inflammation 100% with the CBD oil. But she went from taking essentially, let's say 40 milligrams, so 20 twice a day, to 40 basically every 4 to 5 hours. And after about 4 days, she started feeling better, and she kind of trickled back down to her regular kind of what we call maintenance dose. But very long-winded answer to your question, but we can't recommend, but we know what really worked for us. So we always give somebody, hey, this is the sliding scale, 125 pounds, 40 milligrams, 210 pounds, 60 milligrams.
Yeah, see where you fit.
See where you fit.
Yeah.
But it's a lot of self-regulation. It's almost like you have to keep a journal and say, okay, well, this, I didn't really feel any different. This, oh yeah, that was better. And to me, once you get to a certain point, you're like, you're not really getting much more of a benefit if your body's not needing it. So at that point, you're just wasting product. So if you feel good with less, well, then just take less. It's not about us selling you product by any means. We just want you to feel good.
Yeah. It's interesting because I've always been like, oh, I took exactly what they told me. 40 milligram dropper, right? Or 1/2 is a 40 milligram. I'm like, do I feel anything? Right? Question.
Yeah.
But it never really occurred to me, I guess. They're like, well, why don't you just take more?
Yeah.
To see how it worked.
Well, it's the same thing. People are they're fine with taking 26 Advil. Right. But they're afraid to take more of a herbal extract from a plant.
Right.
And the reality is your body utilizes it in what it needs. So if you don't have trauma, you take too much, you're probably just going to be in a very relaxed mood. But when you do have trauma, your body's going to accept it. It's going to utilize it the best way that it can. But I think the best way to describe it too is that it's not what you feel, it's what you don't feel.
Yeah.
So it's what's gone away. Like if you're feeling stressed, has the stress gone away? If you have some pain, has the pain gone away? And it's never gonna. We had my grandma down in Philadelphia. She's like needs a knee replacement, and she rubbed the lotion on her knee, and she's like, my knee still hurts. This stuff doesn't. We're like, no, that's bone on bone. That's a very different. It's not going to fix that. It might help you manage it a little bit, but it is 100% not going to fix it.
It's a little more than inflammation, right?
Yeah. I think it's a similar story with a lot of supplements. Like you take krill oil for your joints, you're like, well, I don't feel anything, but after you've been on it for a while, and then you run out and you stop taking it, then you start to notice.
I've had so many people, come back to me and be like, I stopped taking it, and I feel like garbage. So I started taking it.
Yeah, you don't realize it.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. And for me, I can't imagine at this point with my knee, my back, and working in the field all day. It's actually, quite frankly, with doing 75 hard, it's been very helpful with the soreness and getting through to the next day.
Yeah, I took some 2 years ago, maybe. I had torn some ligaments in my knee here. And
you signed the waiver.
I just signed the waiver. Yeah, I'm not blaming you. Don't worry, you didn't do it. And I went same thing. I went to the orthopedist. He put me in a brace, and it was like uncomfortable. And I was like, "This sucks." Popping a million Advil a day, and then I was like, "Oh, let me see if I can get some CBD lotion and put that on there." Again, in my head, I was like, "I don't know whether this is like psychosomatic or actually worked, right?" But I definitely felt like I wouldn't say that it took care of all of the pain, right? But this discomfort that I was feeling, like that, it felt very weak, right? And I didn't notice that anymore, right? It just kind of went away. And I once I stopped using it, I was like, oh, I can still feel some discomfort on the outside, just weakness on the outside of the knee, right? Not anymore at this point, but at the time I was like, this is pretty cool.
I can definitely relate. My knee feels very weak. Hence one of the reasons why I'm not taking class. I'm very worried about being able to farm and walk. But I feel like it's more of a product that will help you manage than really make something go away completely. But it's just a step. It's just a small part in making better moves in your life and being a healthier person. I don't think that any one thing. I think actually for a long time myself, you look at doctors and you're like, hey, fix this, right? Rather than looking at it like, hey, you know what? I should take care of myself a little bit and keep myself in good health and be strong and fit and deal with the things that maybe come up. But CBD can't be the answer to it. It's CBD. It's a healthy lifestyle. It's drinking your water. It's working out. It's, doing all the things that will make you into a good human being and a strong, healthy person. And now you have something that will help you even further that along.
Yeah.
What's the farming season look like for you guys? Like, are you starting seed now or soon?
So we like to start some of the food in March if it gets warm enough out where we could start it in the greenhouse.
That's like my only relation to it. Like when I grow vegetable starts, like I'm not growing any this year, but usually it's like right around now, end of February, early March, I'm getting them going up in the shop under the lights.
Yeah, we've had some early starts, and it seems like if we just plant a couple weeks later, they all catch up
better.
anyway. So we'll get all the kind of that stuff going so that we can get our vegetable field ready. And then essentially come June, we like to plant June 1st, and then they'll be in the greenhouse for about a month, and then we'll go out into the field, we'll transplant, and then essentially the plants will be ready, depending on the strain, late September, early October. So it's a relatively short grow season, but our plants last year, the ones we started, it was May 8th, transplanted. So we did kind of a little different grow last year. We actually grew some more for the textile industry, which, funny enough, this is a hemp shirt.
Yeah, cool.
So we grew 2,700 plants, so we started those early, but we had some extra space, so we said, okay, well, let's grow them like we grow our regular CBD plants. So we put those in the field June 8th, and by mid-September, I was on a 3-foot step ladder, and I couldn't reach the top, and I'm 6 foot tall. Yeah, I mean, they just love the soil. They grew like crazy. So hemp, I believe, is the second fastest growing plant on the earth, except for bamboo. But the interesting thing about bamboo is bamboo will grow its roots underground for years before they shoot out. Whereas hemp, put it in the ground 4 months later, you got this massive plant. Yeah.
And what's your day-to-day work tasks like in that short growing season? Are you out there every day doing stuff?
Yeah, for the most part, it's I've done a lot to make things a little bit easier from that sense. We do hand water. We don't like spraying stuff on that could kind of foliar sprays can kind of spread disease, and plus the plant grows from the roots, so we like to root water. So we've had some funny years. We've had a drought, then we had 2 months of rain the next year, and then we had another drought last year. So that entails me dragging hose pretty much all day and just watering, especially once we transplant in July and the hot summers that we've had. It's just by the time I finish, the first plants are wilting, so I'm back out there.
Wow, really?
But every day I'm out in the field checking the plants. We always joke. My wife will see something. She's like, the plant? I'm like, yeah. The, fourth row in, fifth one back. And she's like, yeah. I mean, we could almost name all of them because we spend so much time out in the field. But then when it starts getting later in the year, we're doing testing. We're checking to see where our levels are for the cannabinoids. Then we have to do our state testing. And once we do our state testing, we have to harvest within 30 days. That's just part of the law. They say that after 30 days, the THC levels might change. So it used to be 15 days. So you can imagine that was even tighter for us to chop down every single plant, break them all down, and hang them up. And then we got a little bit of a respite by having 30 days.
So you said harvest is September, October?
Yeah, late September, early October, depending on the strain.
And then how long do they cure for?
It kind of depends. It depends how wet it is. The moisture, right? Our barn has a roof on it, but it does have some holes, and I mean it's not a secure building in that sense. But it's usually about 4 to 5 weeks, just kind of in there with fans going, making sure that it cures, and then the next process of growing comes, which is I'm either trimming. Bucking and trimming, which essentially means just taking the flowers off and putting them through a trimmer. And then the bulk biomass, which is so all of the rest of the plant, all the other branches, those get bucked. So it's me with a leather pair of gloves on and just all day just pulling the flower off into a big bin. And that's what gets extracted into our crude for all the rest of the products.
Interesting. And then, so you package all that up.
Yeah.
Right. And then, so where does that go to end up becoming your next product?
So that's an interesting discussion because we utilized a company up in Vermont to do our extraction to start, and they were awesome. I called, I believe, 20 extractors, and I didn't like any of them. I didn't like their culture. I didn't like what they represented. And we ended up finding these guys, and they were very focused on small farms and helping out the little guy, and just assured us that we were going to do really well. Unfortunately, their business went under. So it changed hands. We talked to that extractor. So all of our current product is still from that. The next steps for us we're undecided yet because we haven't found any good extractors that we want to use. So I think that's going to be the next step for us. Unfortunately, it's a very large capital investment, but we'd love to bring that in-house and have the plants never leave our farm, which I think is the ideal situation anyway. But that's a whole other skill set and a pretty large capital investment.
I bet.
Is there a certain point where the cured plants can no longer be, once you break them down, like they can't be extracted anymore? Like, does they have like a lifespan at some point?
Not really. I mean, it all depends on how you store them, right? If you cure them properly, and then you have a well-regulated environment, they're going to stay pretty well because they're out of sunlight. I don't think you want to be sitting there for 5 years on this stuff because you have no idea what it looks like. So we're going to continue growing every year and extracting as much as we can. But that's a tough battle that we have, is how much do we grow? How much do we keep? How much do we keep as flour for our customers to go in and utilize as just flour? And then if we take too much of that, are we going to have enough product for our customers? So we're doing this kind of sliding scale calculations every year.
Yeah, sure.
Right, because you haven't been in business quite long enough to really have those numbers dialed in.
No, not at all. We know how much we can get, which is really nice, and we're in the process of building our customer base. So we can handle a lot more, and we want to continue to be able to handle more and more. And that's why I think eventually we'll all grow our 2-acre farm and be looking for much more land.
10,000.
10,000 sounds great, dude. Yeah. That's tough to argue with.
And there's so many reasons for land and being a steward to the land and taking care of it. I mean, bringing good bugs, you have birds, ecology, and biology in the soil. But yeah, we would love to be stewards to a lot more land and have a little bit more, I guess, room for R&D, let's call it, because there is that whole other side of the business, which is textiles, building materials. I mean, there's so much that can be done. I mean, there's energy. I mean, you can make ethanol from it. There's so many things, and that side you can't do on a small scale. That has to be a much larger scale. And I know we talked briefly about Hurczyn and the amazing things that they're doing, starting a complete American supply chain. And it's absolutely crazy that there's no hemp in the United States. I mean, everything was made out of hemp before World War II. I mean, all the Navy rope, uniform sails, I mean, everything. And there were so many farms that were able to process it. And then I've been researching, Connecticut was one of the largest textile manufacturers in the country. And you look at all our mills, I was doing some research the other day, they're all apartments, condos. And I'm like, where did all this equipment go? Because they had these massive spinning machines and these massive looms. And
Pete Roberts bought them all.
Yeah. They're all in Maine.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, Farmington, Maine.
I don't know. So it's a pretty monumental task to bring some of that stuff back, but it's so needed in our society, and quite frankly, our kids need it too. These blue collar jobs are just non-existent right now, and that's, I think, one of the biggest purposes of Addison Farm and the businesses that we're trying to start is to really start building some infrastructure back to gain some employees and give those employees some security and build a culture around that where we can start building some real things. It starts with farming, right? I think there's a pretty big disconnect when we realize, like, the shirts that we're wearing, those are grown, right? That's a plant that was made and manipulated and turned and weaved and done and made into something. When you look at hemp, I mean, there's a pretty booming industry right now. I think the International Building Code for next year is going to have hempcrete in it. So that's just the woody core of the plant that's ground up, and that's going to be mixed with a lime, and you can build a wall out of that, and it's an insulated wall. There's hemp wool. I know there's a company, I believe, in Kentucky that's making wood floors. I mean, it's anything that can be made out of cotton or wood. Pretty much petroleum-based stuff too can be made out of hemp. It's insane when you start looking into it, and the fact that it was taken away for so long.
Yeah, several years ago, maybe I'm pushing 10 years ago now, there was a company, a jiu-jitsu gi company, who was advertising this hemp-infused gi. And it was supposed to be like antimicrobial and super strong, right? And lightweight, blah, 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 blah. And everybody was buying it. And then, 6 months, not even a year later, it was like, oh, yeah, by the way, our manufacturer was bullshitting us, and it doesn't have hemp in it at all, right? And they had to refund everybody, and I bought one. I was like, oh yeah, I got a hemp gi. It's so cool. No, I didn't.
Just
I had a cotton. Yeah. But I remember that was such a big stink, but I was bought in. I'm like, yeah, man, this is cool. Made from hemp.
Yeah. Well, not only can you imagine if you got that same gi from a local farm,
right? Yeah,
that made the fabric.
Yeah, it'd be awesome.
That sewed it, that put it together. That's all American made. I mean, would be the most amazing thing. And think about how many jobs you could create doing that.
Yeah.
Like you said, if you have 10,000 acres, you get a lot of hands in there, right?
Yeah. I'm fairly certain that this gi was not made in the U.S.
Yeah. But yeah, and I think that's kind of the disconnect with any product, right? Even the tinctures, even the little oils that people will see in stores or gas stations or anything like that, if you just start questioning, well, where's this come from? What's it made out of, right? Who's making it? You're going to start getting down a road where you say, hey, you know what, maybe I'm not going to try this product. Maybe I'll go, to my local farm and support the local businesses around me. But if we can take that to another step, because obviously health and wellness is wonderful, and we want to continue doing that for as long as we can. I use the products daily, so I'm going to need to just to kind of take care of myself too. But to help people around us is the best thing. And think about if you can start industry from scratch again and start really making a change and making, like I said, actual products that mean something, right?
Yeah, I mean it's a slow start to get it going, but one step at a time.
Right. Yeah. Well, you need to build a house out of brick. You got to start with the first brick, right? And I think that's the biggest thing that we're trying to teach, our daughter. It's absolutely amazing. My wife's homeschooling her. We've made our living room into a classroom, and it starts with one thing and it builds on the next. And it's absolutely amazing to watch her just absorb everything. It was, I think one of the coolest things that we did with her is we made a little raised bed for her. And the first year we went in and we kind of said, okay, plant this here, and she kind of just followed along and had fun. The next year we're out there, we're planting some bush beans that we're going to have, and she just takes the beans, she gets up, she goes over to her planter, digs a hole, puts it in, drags the hose over, waters it, and me and my wife are sitting there like, yeah, we got it.
Yeah,
it's good.
Yeah, awesome.
Right. So it's just absolutely amazing to see her growing up in a very different setting than how we grew up.
Yeah.
And just learning, and she's just soaking everything in. I think I actually said somewhere here, it's like, there's your school is not necessarily in the classroom, right? You learn so much outside of, school and play and doing things and interactions. I remember back in engineering school at UConn, we had a mechanics class, and we were learning about beams and cantilevers and things like that. And I'm sitting in this classroom in the kind of the basement floor of the engineering building, and we're learning about this. I'm looking at the board, and out to the left, they're building the student union, where they have the steel frame going up. And I'm kind of like, can we just, it's like 80 degrees outside too. And we were just sitting in this classroom. I'm like, can't we go outside? And he's like, no. We just kept learning. But I'm like, how much better of an interaction would that have been and actually watch somebody build it?
You're drawing on the board.
Yeah.
Or this building going up right next to us.
Right next to us. So, I think getting the actual interaction, getting your hands dirty, is the best way to learn. And, it's like anything. You could, if you watch jiu-jitsu on YouTube, it is not the same as doing it. So,
it's not? What are you talking about? What?
And I'm sure anybody who walked in off the street would be able to say that. Actually, for prep for this, because I know you're having, I hope I say this right, Fionn here, April 15th. So I was like, well, let me learn a little bit more about this, because I've watched it, but I've never seen a competition or anything. So, of course, I watch, some big world champion guys, and my daughter goes, "Can we watch the girls?" I'm like, "Yeah, of course." Cool. So I knew about her. So I go, "Let me check this out." So we actually watched both the IBJJF and the ADCC, and but we watched the gi first, and it was just from my standpoint unbelievable to watch, because the control and just the grip strength, and like it seems like nobody's moving. And you're like, yeah, but do you know how hard it is to hold someone like that?
Yeah, they're not moving because they don't want to move.
Right. So we watched that whole thing. And then we went to the ADCC with Nogi. And that was a completely different experience. And I just was watching it with her. And I don't know if this is the proper terminology, but she got put into a leg lock. And she was locked out. And I'm like, I thought she won this. Am I watching the right video? And she somehow got out of that, and I couldn't believe it. And my daughter's just, you can see she's like all fired up about it. So we finished watching these things, and she has these little toys like Elsa and whatnot, and she starts making them do jujitsu. And she's like, "Dad, look at this. See how the leg goes between?" And then she flipped, and I was like, okay. So she might be coming to class at some point.
That sounds awesome. How old is she?
So she's 6. She's going to be 7 in July. So she just soaks everything in.
That's awesome.
My daughter just started, I don't know, at the beginning of the year, maybe. I forget exactly when it was. She's 6.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Awesome.
Yes. There's plenty of time. Plenty of time.
But I think that's the biggest thing, though, is kids are so able to absorb anything. And she's so detail oriented. So the fact that she saw that she was reaching between and kind of locking the leg is unbelievable. But that's one of the, I guess, enlightenments that I had when I was going through this whole process of kind of setting the standard and living a very healthy life, is I started noticing that she mimics everything that I do. Yeah. I mean, if I go to the cabinet and I grab a cookie, she goes to the cabinet and grabs a cookie. If I go to the fridge and I grab a bunch of carrots, she goes, "Hey, Dad, I want some carrots." So I noticed that it was everything that I was doing. So it started being this thing where I have to be ready at all times for opportunity. So I can't have her watching me have somebody come up to the farm stand and me running around the house trying to get ready. It's, no, her dad's ready to go. I've already done my workout in the morning, and I've already had my coffee, and I'm ready to talk to these people. And I think that's been an awesome path, is kind of setting the standard for myself, and it's trickled down. She's actually doing 75 hard with me. We set up a whole thing. Of course, she doesn't work out twice a day. She has to brush her teeth and listen to her teacher, right? But it's been an absolutely awesome process. I think it's moved the business and us forward, leaps and bounds.
It's funny you say that about like all the opportunities, because one of the things that I've been thinking about more recently with my daughter is how like the lessons are everywhere. And when I lose sight of that, like that I'm teaching her every single time I'm doing any engagement with her, right? She's 6. She doesn't know anything, right? That's when I feel like, you have like that dad guilt where I'm like, I could have handled that better, right? And I have to constantly remind myself, not constantly remind myself, I should give myself a little more credit than that, but like there's lessons
they're always
everywhere.
Watching, always listening.
There's lessons everywhere. And you've got to be willing to like embrace that if you have a child, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah. It changes significantly when you have to, you have to show them the right way to do things. And we actually just had a baby boy too. He's 4 months old.
Awesome.
So Colt. So he's awesome, and just to watch her interact with him. But again, you have to set that standard, because you know that the lessons are everywhere, and you have to be able to have the clarity to be able to point out that lesson when it does come about.
Yeah.
So speaking of Colt, I understand he has a business in his name already.
So
Young
He's a piece of
entrepreneur.
business owner already at 4 months.
So Addison Farm. So our Addison Farm was named after our daughter Addison, and we actually named the website happyaddison.com, because we said, hey, what do we want to do? We want to make her happy. So we went into that, and as we've kind of progressed, and we're helping people with our products, and just kind of helping guide people with their betterment, we decided to start another business, and of course we needed another one since we have 2 kids. So it's Colt Helps. So Colt Helps, and colthelps.com. And really all that is a culmination of our experiences over the years, starting businesses and trying to improve ourselves. And my wife worked as an attorney for 10 years. She was in-house counsel at an investment firm, and she's incredibly smart. I don't know how I landed her, but she did really, really well there. So she said, well, we have some good documents that we could utilize and allow people some templates, so that if they want to start a business, so we have kind of this guide that says, hey, if you want to start an LLC, well, here's a operating agreement. Here's a NDA if you need it. Here's we have confidentiality agreements on there. But it's just templates that'll kind of motivate people to get to that next step. Because again, if you can get every single person to say, hey, I want to start a business, to actually say, I'm going to take action to start the business, because that first hurdle is always the hardest. So we figured, well, let's put some of that stuff out there, hopefully get people to that next step and get motivated to do it. But then it's also the journey that we've been on to better ourselves. So I have some workouts in the schedule that I use up there, and the checklist that I'm using for all the things that have helped me organize my life. So currently I wake up at 5:30. I do my first workout. It's just straight outside, riding the bike no matter what. And I've kind of put this together so that I could succeed at 75 Hard. It's been a long process, but I started a year ago when my buddy passed away. He was 32 years old. He ended up with kidney cancer. It was absolutely terrible. It's a pretty heart-wrenching story, but his wife had a emergency C-section so that he can hold his baby.
Oh, jeez.
I mean, it was absolutely insane. And I took that experience and I ran as hard as I could with it, because I realized that I'm not going to let that experience go down in vain. I mean, he was such a strong, positive, emotional. I mean, his wife is absolutely amazing too, and now she's raising two young boys. And I just said, I'm not going to let his life go to waste. And I just took it upon myself to be better every single day. So I first started out with this program. I call it Be the Best You 60-Day Challenge. So it ended up being 60 days before his charity golf tournament, which we donated a bunch of products to and went to. And I said, I'm gonna do this. And I worked out. I set myself a bedtime. I got a time for me to wake up in the morning, which I was always a night owl. I'm like, I'll stay up till 3. I'll be fine tomorrow. And no, I'm going to bed because I need to set a good example. And I lost a ton of weight, and I was actually able to wear, his wife gave me one of his polos, one of his golf shirts from Torrey Pines, and I was able to fit into it. It was a large, which I mean, go way back when I was playing soccer, I was 195 pounds. I was fit. I ran under a 5-minute mile. I just super, super fit. And then when I graduated UConn, I was 273 a couple of years later.
Wow.
So I blew up like crazy, and I've been fighting that for 15 years. So I really took it seriously when he passed, and I said, you know what, this is enough of this crap, and I'm going to really get at it. And it was pretty big honor to be able to fit into his shirt and wear it. But then the funniest part, that 60 days ended. I said, all right, let's keep going. And I just kept going. I actually did a whole another 60 days. And then I was kind of figuring out, well, should I do this? Should I fall back? Is working out every day the best? I don't know. So I kind of teetered on that. And then I decided, you know what? I've done all this stuff. Let's do 75 hard. Let's take it to the next level. And physically, it's difficult for me. I'd love to go running. I'd love to do things, but my knee doesn't allow it. So I just work out outside. I do some weights. I do some crunches and things like that. But the mental aspect is just absolutely amazing because you're winning every day. And actually, it's funny because Addie, being part of it, she looks at me and she comes up to me, hey, Dad, you win today? I'm like, yeah, sweetie, I won. Did you win today?
That's great.
She's
Got
like, I
those teeth
checked up.
brushed.
Yeah, exactly. I checked my checklist too. So it's really put me into a good state. And as you can imagine, just running your own business, we do this full time. Nobody's telling you to get up or go anywhere.
Right.
We don't have any employees right now.
You can take a day off if you
yeah,
want.
you could take it, but I don't have that liberty because if I'm not selling product, if I'm not getting into people's, getting into conversations, trying to help people, we don't have anything coming in. So it's very important for me to stay motivated on a daily. And it became so much easier when I finally realized, hey, guys, it's not for me. I want to help people. I want to make this world a better place. And it's so crazy to have my daughter come in and be like, did you just help those people? I'm like, yeah, they bought some products. She's like, that's awesome. CBD is going to help.
That's cool.
That's amazing.
Yeah, that's really cool.
I think that's a really motivational story, and just need to help you keep building your outlets to get it out to people.
Yeah, well, appreciate it. I mean,
Yeah.
it's been a pretty bumpy road, but we're in a really good place now, and I think that's the biggest part is getting our name out and talking to a lot of people and just helping everybody, and it's gonna grow organically just by word of mouth.
Yep.
You should be proud of being able to take motivation from a horrible situation, right? And a lot of people talk about, I'm going to use this to make a change, right? And
It lasts for 2 days.
it lasts for 2 days and it doesn't work, or regardless of what the outcome is, right? The mental part of it to say, I'm going to do this and I'm going to stick to whatever it is for 60, 120, however many days. Like, you should be proud of that, man. That's pretty impressive to hear. And, it makes me think about things that I've said, like, oh, I'm going to do this, right? And I don't do it, right? So that's pretty cool.
Yeah. Thank you.
Commend you for that.
I appreciate that. And it really did start a lot of it with just excuses, right? I've made so many excuses over the years of, well, I can't do this, or I got hurt, or, well, this weekend I'm just going to go out drinking or whatever. And it's a really tough thing to look in the mirror and say, hey, all this is your fault. And where you are financially, where you are physically, where you are mentally. And I took that to heart, and I said, you know what, I'm going to be better, and I'm going to work at it. And it's just, at this point, I just want it to spread like wildfire, because I've never felt better in my life. I feel mentally the best I felt. I feel physically the best. I mean, I look better now than I did for the last 15 years. So it's been a wonderful, wonderful ride. And I just hope that I inspire more people to get on that route.
That's awesome. I think you definitely do. So before we wrap,
I feel like we should just close the podcast on that statement, right?
I was going to say, before we wrap this up, we'll see how well you prepared. So we're in this alternate universe where you're having your first UFC fight. What's your walkout music?
Yeah, have you prepared for this?
I have.
All right, yeah, nice.
So I thought about it quite a lot, and there's a song called "Astronaut in the Ocean" by Masked Wolf, if you know it. So the other day we were playing. It was one of the nice days that we had outside, and I just started blasting it. And me and my daughter are just dancing outside in the middle of the street. And my wife is like, "What are you doing?" But it's such an upbeat song, and it really gets us kind of fired up, and I just love that interaction. And obviously, if it has to do with your kid, I'm gonna want to rip someone's face off after that anyway. But I really like there's actually a positive line in it that I absolutely love, which is let's get this straight for a second. I'm gonna work even if I don't get paid for progression. And it's like, that's just what I'm doing right now. It's making the thankless runs. It's working every single day, trying to build something from scratch. So I don't see benefit from it all the time, but I can tell you when I have somebody that showed up at my house that, can't even get out of the car because they're so nervous and stressed. And then I see them a month later and they're like, "Hey, Andy, what's going on?" I'm like, there's just nothing better. So it's well worth the work. So I'm going to work no matter what.
There you go. Great. I think that wraps it up for you.
Yeah.
You want to give everyone your websites one last time?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, where can people find you?
Yeah. So for Addison Farm, it's happyaddison.com, and then it's Addison Farm LLC on all platforms, Facebook, Instagram. And then Colt Helps is colthelps.com, and it's just Colt Helps on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter.
Thank you. Thank you for everything you're doing.
Thanks for coming, man. That was awesome.
No, I appreciate you
Keep
guys
up the
having
good
me.
work.
Thank you so much.
Awesome. Thank you.